If I asked you to close your eyes and picture an adventure, what would spring to mind? Make sure that whatever you're picturing, if acted out, would leave a fantastic impression in your memory. Perhaps you would picture a trip to the Grand Canyon, feeling your stomach drop as you looked down over the edge. Maybe you would think of a cross-country road trip to some major city full of hustle and bustle. Whatever springs to mind, I can almost certainly confirm that it would not be the adventure that my girlfriend and I undertook during my final winter break of my time in college. You did not picture a lazy drive on I-72, with the view outside your window on all sides being a mix of wind turbines and cornfields. Those of you that do not inhabit the Midwest probably fail to imagine what it's like on these lonely, desolate roads. If you're traveling on a weekday during work hours, there's almost assuredly no traffic besides a few semis. The roads are yours for the taking, so to speak. Your main enemy in this scenario is the drowsiness you experience from the sheer lack of changes in scenery. Our adventure began with one such journey, but the idea had actually begun to take root in our brains much earlier. When bringing up nostalgic memories from our childhood, it seemed both my girlfriend and I shared a love for Aladdin's Castle, a now-defunct arcade chain owned by Namco. There had been a location in the mall we had both frequented growing up. There was nothing particularly special about it at the time, but we had both made fond memories, gambling away our tokens and trading our hard-earned tickets for dinky little prizes, which to us felt more valuable than gold. As a freshman in college, I discovered that there were still two locations in operation. One was located in Pennsylvania, and the other was in our home state of Illinois. I could not believe there was still an operable location relatively close to our hometown. We both dreamily said we would be sure to visit it, but we sort of shelved the idea. Around a year later, the pandemic begun, and we sort of unofficially kissed the idea goodbye. One morning a few months ago, I woke up to a late-night text from my girlfriend that said only one thing: the Aladdin's Castle is still open. Somehow, this long-forgotten arcade, which had appeared to be on its last legs more than 2 years prior, was still standing. We immediately set to work planning a trip. As I said earlier, we selected a weekday, and it was just after Christmas, when neither of us had any obligations. When we were deciding the particulars of the trip, I knew that there was one more person I had to invite. Nearly every visit to the arcade that I had taken as a child had been with my grandfather. He's been retired for nearly 20 years now, and was the one who drove me when I was a child to my frequent doctor's visits. In order to make them feel more appealing, we were always capping them with a journey to the toy store or the arcade. On many of these occasions we had visited Aladdin's Castle, playing the games together and making memories. I gave him a call to explain our newfound adventure. His voice was full of joy when I said that we'd be traveling to the world's last Aladdin's Castle, and we wanted him to join us. An unorthodox adventure, to be sure. We set out that morning bound for the bustling metropolis of Quincy, Illinois. In reality, it's one of those quiet Midwestern towns that I've seen dozens of. Driving down its main street yields a view of chain fast food restaurants and empty parking lots. One of these empty lots was the source of our first smile. A sign for Kmart was still up, and beckoning would-be shoppers into a now deserted building. Another blast of nostalgia for everyone in the car, as our minds flashed back to our last experience with the retail giant of years past. The whole trip was otherworldly, as Quincy felt rather anachronistic. My grandfather navigated us to the Quincy Mall, and we walked through it not sure what to expect. There were dozens of shoppers, and we were all glad to see the mall alive and well, but as we passed shop after shop, we started to wonder if the Aladdin's Castle still remained. At one point we turned to find an empty glass brick storefront, and our hearts fell. We voiced our belief that this may have been the Aladdin's Castle, but I checked and double-checked the store listing on Google Maps and proudly displayed the open green text on the application. We pushed on, and finally at the other end of the mall, we saw it. The world's last Aladdin's Castle was in our sights. Lindsay and I were ecstatic. We took pictures of the storefront before moving inside. Waves of nostalgia washing over us, we witnessed the flashing lights, the skee-ball games, and the various arcade cabinets. Many things had changed since our last visits more than a decade ago. Tokens were dropped in favor of a card swipe system, and tickets had been replaced in the same way. There was no longer an employee handing out prizes, but instead a capsule machine not unlike an elaborate gumball dispenser. None of that mattered, though. We'd made it. The adventure had been a success. We spent the next hour or so playing games and communicating with the sole remaining employee. When we explained to him that we had made the pilgrimage to the last remaining location, he presented us with a memento, a vintage Aladdin's Castle token from the old system. We vigorously thanked him, and there was nothing anyone could do to wipe our smiles from our faces from then on. The joy was infectious, and even my grandfather was in a wonderful mood. We rounded the day off with a visit to a few stores, and my grandfather purchased a large gift for my grandmother. I knew that he had had a wonderful time from this display of affection. Now, in 2022, Namco has refused to renew the license on the name of Aladdin's Castle, and the arcade in Quincy no longer bears the name. We made it just in time, and have the memories safely stored to help us through those rainy days that will come. I wanted to share this story to highlight what an adventure can be. It doesn't have to be anything grand. Forget spending money and showing off. Forget impressing people just to look good. Instead, do the thing that will stick with you. The journey was wonderful to us, and only to us. On the surface, it was just a trip to a worn-out arcade full of broken cabinets in an understaffed ghost town of a mall. We traversed a road that didn't have a single tourist trap or other interesting thing, but we made it our own. The memories we have are special, and the adventure is unique. It was perfect because we felt that it was perfect.